The first thing to return was sound, a low, rhythmic beeping that seemed to drill into the thick fog of unconsciousness. Then came sensation, a dull, throbbing ache that bloomed from the center of her back and radiated outwards, a sunburst of pain with every shallow breath. Eleanor's eyelids felt glued shut, heavy as lead curtains. A dry, papery feeling coated her tongue. Where was she? The last thing she remembered was the scent of sea salt and night-blooming jasmine, the soft strum of a distant guitar, the warmth of Julian's hand on the small of her back. They were on vacation. The balcony. A soft, rustling sound beside her. A familiar scent, one of lavender and chamomile cut through the sterile, antiseptic smell of the room. Her sister, Isabel. Eleanor fought against the leaden weight of her eyelids, managing to pry them open just a fraction. The light was a brutal, searing white. She saw a blurry shape, a cascade of dark hair. A voice so faint she thought she might have imagined it, a ghost of a sound against her ear. It was him. The whisper was a tiny, sharp thing, a shard of glass in the cottony silence of her mind. It snagged on something. Him? The word echoed. Julian. The memory came back in a sudden, sickening rush. The balcony. The stars over the Aegean Sea, scattered like diamonds on black velvet. She had leaned against the railing, laughing at something he'd said, her heart full and light. She had turned to look at him, her handsome, charming Julian, the man she had loved for 3 years, the man she thought she would marry. His smile was gone. In its place was an expression she had never seen before, a chilling emptiness, a void where the warmth used to be. And then, the pressure. 2 hands, firm and decisive, against her back. It wasn't a stumble, not an accident. It was a push. A deliberate, shocking act of violence that sent her tipping over the edge, the world flipping upside down, the stars rushing up to meet her as she fell into darkness. The beeping of the machine beside her bed seemed to grow louder, faster, a frantic counterpoint to the sudden, frantic beating of her own heart. The whisper confirmed the horrible, unbelievable truth her body already knew. It was him. Eleanor tried to speak, to ask, to scream, but all that escaped her lips was a dry, croaking sound. The blurry shape of her sister sharpened into focus. Isabel's face was pale, her eyes red-rimmed and shadowed with a sleepless grief that mirrored Eleanor's own pain. She was holding a damp cloth, dabbing it gently on Eleanor's forehead. "Elle? Oh, thank God, you're awake." Isabel's voice was thick with relief, but laced with a steely undertone Eleanor had always associated with her sister's protective nature. "Izzy?" Eleanor's voice was a barely there rasp. "What?" "Shh, don't try to talk." Isabel's eyes darted towards the door, a flicker of fear in them. "Just listen. You've been in a coma for 5 days. You fell. That's the story. You had too much wine. You leaned back too far. An accident." An accident. The word was a lie. A flimsy bandage over a gaping wound. Eleanor tried to shake her head, a minuscule movement that sent a fresh wave of agony through her body. Isabel's eyes held hers, and in their depths, Eleanor saw a shared, unspoken understanding. "He's here," Isabel whispered, her voice dropping again, tight with fury. "He's been playing the part of the devastated boyfriend. He's fooled everyone. The doctors, the police, our parents. They call him every day for updates. He sits by your bed for hours, holding your hand, whispering how much he loves you." The image was so grotesque, so monstrous, it made Eleanor's stomach churn. The hand that had pushed her, now tenderly holding hers. The voice that had been silent as she fell, now whispering lies of love. Why? The word was a puff of air, but Isabel understood. Isabel's face hardened. "I don't know. Not for sure. But I've been digging, Elle. While he was busy playing the saint, I was on his laptop. He thought I was just booking a flight home for Mom and Dad. He's careless, arrogant. He has a folder. Hidden. It's full of your financial information. Your inheritance from Grandma, your investment portfolio, the life insurance policy you took out last year, the one where he's the sole beneficiary." The pieces began to click into place, each one a cold, heavy weight settling in Eleanor's chest. It wasn't a crime of passion. It was a business transaction. Her life, measured and calculated against a monetary sum. The man she had shared her bed with, her dreams with, had looked at her and seen a price tag. The love she thought was the bedrock of her life was nothing more than a performance, a long con leading to this hospital bed. "The police," Eleanor managed. "They believe him," Isabel said, her voice bitter. "A charming man, a beautiful couple, a tragic accident on a romantic getaway. They closed the case in a day. It's his word against a woman who was in a coma. He told them you were emotional, unstable lately. He's already started building his narrative. A cold dread, more profound than the physical pain, seeped into Eleanor's bones. She was trapped in a broken body, in a foreign country, and in a web of lies spun by the man who tried to kill her. He had almost succeeded. He had taken her future, shattered her body, and now he was trying to steal her truth, to paint her as the architect of her own demise. But as she lay there, listening to the steady beep of the monitor, a new feeling began to flicker to life amidst the pain and despair. It was a tiny spark in the darkness, fragile but persistent. It was anger, a deep primal rage that warmed her blood. He would not get away with this. He would not erase her. She had survived the fall. She had woken up. And she had a witness. Her sister, her fierce, loyal Isabel, who had seen the truth in the darkness and whispered it back to her. The fall had been an ending, the end of the life she thought she knew. But waking up was a beginning. It was the start of a war. The minutes that followed Isabel's revelation were the longest of Eleanor's life. She lay with her eyes closed, feigning a drifting consciousness. But behind the mask of placidity, her mind was a whirlwind. Every creak of the door, every footstep in the hallway, sent a jolt of adrenaline through her. He could walk in at any moment. How would she face him? How could she look into the eyes of the man who had tried to murder her and not scream? Isabel seemed to understand her turmoil. She continued to dab Eleanor's forehead with the cool cloth, her movements calm and measured, a silent anchor in Eleanor's storm. The doctor will be in soon, Elle. He'll ask you questions. Just focus on me. Squeeze my hand if you need anything. The plan was unspoken but clear. They had to play along. For now. The door swished open. Eleanor's heart leaped into her throat, the monitor beside her chirping a frantic rhythm. Isabel's hand tightened around hers. "My darling, you're awake." It was Julian's voice, thick with a practiced theatrical relief. Eleanor forced herself to remain still, to keep her breathing even. She slowly, painfully, turned her head toward the sound. There he was. He looked tired, his usually immaculate hair slightly disheveled, a shadow of a beard on his jaw. He had curated the perfect image of a worried partner, sleepless with anxiety. The sight of him, so deceptively caring, ignited a fresh inferno of rage in her chest. He rushed to her bedside, his eyes, the same empty eyes she remembered from the balcony, now glistening with what looked like unshed tears. He reached for her hand, but Isabel was there first, gently intercepting him. "The doctor said not to overstimulate her, Julian," she said, her voice even but firm. "She's just woken up. It's all very confusing for her." Julian's face clouded with a flicker of annoyance before smoothing back into his mask of concern. He was not used to being challenged. "Of course, I'm sorry, I'm just so relieved." He looked at Eleanor, his voice softening into the intimate tone he had used so many times to disarm her. "Elle, can you hear me? It's me, Julian." Eleanor knew this was her first test. Her survival depended on her performance. She let her eyes flutter, as if struggling to focus. She looked from his face to Isabel's, a deliberate picture of confusion. "Julian," she whispered, the name tasting like poison. What happened?" "My back." He took the opening she gave him, his expression melting into one of deep sadness. He recounted the prepared story, the lie he had polished until it shone like truth. "We were on the balcony, my love. You were so happy you'd had a little too much wine. You leaned back to look at the stars, and you slipped. I tried to grab you, but it was too fast." He choked on a sob, a masterful touch. "I've been sitting here every day, praying for you to wake up." Every word was a physical blow. She wanted to claw at his face, to scream the truth for the whole hospital to hear. Instead, she channeled the rage, the betrayal, the agony into a single convincing tear that slipped from the corner of her eye and traced a path through the grime on her temple. I don't remember," she murmured, and it was the truest thing she had said. She didn't remember the wine, the laughter. All she remembered was the push. "I just remember the stars." It was the perfect response. It confirmed his story without exonerating him in her mind. It gave her an excuse for any gaps in her memory, any confusion she might display. Julian's relief was palpable. He believed he was in the clear. "That's okay," he said, patting her hand. "The doctor said you might have some memory loss. The important thing is that you're back with me. Back with you," she thought, a cold fury settling in her gut. "So you can finish the job?" The doctor arrived soon after, a kind, middle-aged man with tired eyes. He asked her a series of questions, Her name, the year, the name of the Prime Minister. She answered them all correctly, playing the part of a patient slowly emerging from a fog. When he asked about the fall, she repeated what she had told Julian. I don't remember it happening, just leaning back. The doctor nodded, satisfied. Amnesia around the traumatic event is very common, the brain's way of protecting itself. He turned to Julian and Isabel. She's remarkably lucky. A fall from that height. The fact that her spinal injuries aren't more severe is a miracle. Julian nodded gravely, accepting the doctor's words as a testament to his own fabricated narrative of a tragic accident. We're just so grateful she's alive. Once the doctor left, Julian announced he was going to call Eleanor's parents with the good news. The moment the door closed behind him, the tension in the room snapped. Eleanor's facade crumbled, and a dry, ragged sob escaped her. Isabel was instantly by her side, wiping her tears, her own eyes blazing with a cold fire. You were brilliant, Elle. Absolutely brilliant. He bought it completely. I can't. Izzy, I can't look at him, Eleanor rasped, her body trembling. It feels like he's tainting the air in the room. I know, but you have to. We have to be smart about this, Isabel said, her voice low and urgent. That folder on his laptop is our only real proof. I couldn't copy it. It's encrypted and I was afraid he'd come back and catch me. But I saw enough. He's been moving money, preparing. He has a one-way ticket booked back to the States for a week from now. He thinks you'll still be here recovering, and he'll be long gone with the insurance payout. A deadline. The war now had a clock. 7 days. How do we get it? Eleanor asked, her mind racing. He takes his laptop everywhere. He leaves it when he comes here, Isabel said, thinking aloud. He locks it in his hotel room safe. But he's arrogant. The password to his laptop is probably the same as everything else. Eleanor, my love, or some other garbage. A new plan began to form. A desperate, risky strategy taking shape in the sterile white room. Eleanor's broken body was an anchor, but her mind was finally clear. The fog of love had been violently stripped away, replaced by the stark clarity of survival. She was no longer a victim falling through the air. She was a woman who had hit the ground and started to claw her way back up. He trusts you, Izzy, Eleanor said, her voice gaining a sliver of strength. He thinks you're on his side. You're the grieving sister-in-law, worried about me. Isabel met her gaze, her dark eyes reflecting Eleanor's own resolve. What are you thinking? I think, Eleanor said, a grim smile touching her lips for the first time, that you need to get very, very sick tomorrow. The next morning, Isabel executed her part of the plan with an actress's flair. She was pale, her hand pressed to her stomach, her voice a weak imitation of its usual strength. She claimed to have come down with a sudden, violent stomach bug, a plausible consequence of stress and foreign food. Julian, ever the gentleman, was a portrait of concern, though Eleanor could detect a sliver of annoyance in his eyes. Isabel's presence was a complication to his performance, a second person he had to manage. Her being incapacitated was, in a twisted way, convenient for him. You should go back to the hotel and rest, Izzy, he said, his tone dripping with false sympathy. I'll stay with Eleanor. I won't leave her side. Are you sure? Isabel asked, her voice trembling pitifully. I feel so guilty leaving her. Don't be silly, Julian insisted, practically steering her towards the door. Go. Rest. I've got this. It was exactly what they'd hoped for. The moment Isabel was gone, the atmosphere in the room shifted. The air grew heavy, thick with the unspoken truth that lay between them. Julian pulled a chair to Eleanor's bedside, taking her hand. His touch felt like a brand, a searing reminder of his betrayal. She had to fight the instinct to recoil. Just us now, he said softly, stroking her fingers. I'm so glad you're back, Elle. I was so lost without you. Eleanor turned her head to look at him, her heart a block of ice in her chest. She had to keep him talking. She had to keep him here, distracted, while Isabel worked her magic. She had to find out why, not just for the money, but the deeper, more personal reason. How could the man who had written her love poems and held her when she cried now look at her with such cold calculation? Why me, Julian? She asked, her voice a fragile whisper. She let a tear roll down her cheek. A carefully crafted performance of a heartbroken, confused woman. What did I ever do to you? For a moment, a flicker of genuine surprise crossed his face. He had expected gratitude, relief, not questions, but he recovered quickly, his expression shifting back to one of patient sadness. My love, what are you talking about? It was an accident. A terrible, tragic accident. Was it? She pressed, her voice gaining a little more strength, a little more edge. She was testing the waters, seeing how far she could push him. Because the last thing I remember is you looking at me, and you weren't smiling. A muscle twitched in his jaw. You're confused, Eleanor. The fall, it must have scrambled your memories. No, she said, her voice dropping, becoming more intense. I'm not confused. I remember your hands on my back. I remember the push. The silence that followed was absolute. The only sound was the steady, rhythmic beep of the heart monitor, a sound that suddenly seemed menacing. Julian's mask of concern finally began to crack, the carefully constructed facade crumbling to reveal the cold, hard man beneath. He dropped her hand as if it had burned him. You're hysterical, he said, his voice low and dangerous. The trauma is making you paranoid. Am I? Eleanor's voice was steady now, fueled by a righteous fury that burned away her fear. Or did you think I would die? Did you think you could just throw me away like a piece of trash and walk away with my money? His eyes narrowed, all pretense of love and concern gone, replaced by a chilling venom. You should have died, he hissed, his voice a venomous whisper. You were supposed to be a tragic story, a beautiful memory, not this complication. The raw, unvarnished truth of his words was more painful than the fall itself. It was a confirmation of her worthlessness in his eyes. She was not a person, but an obstacle. So, the last 3 years, it was all a lie? She asked, her voice breaking for real this time. The pain of that realization was a fresh, sharp agony. He almost laughed, a cruel, mirthless sound. Of course it was a lie. You were so easy, Eleanor. So desperate for love, so eager to believe any pretty word I whispered. You handed me your heart, your trust, your bank account details. Did you really think a man like me would fall for a woman like you? You're sweet, yes, but you're so ordinary. Each word was a hammer blow, shattering the last vestiges of the love she had once felt for him. The man she had loved did not exist. He was a phantom, a character Julian had played to perfection. You won't get away with this, she said, her voice trembling with a mixture of rage and grief. He stood up, looking down at her, his face a mask of cold contempt. I already have, he said, his voice confident. It's your word against mine. A confused, hysterical woman with memory loss versus a devoted, grieving boyfriend. Who do you think they'll believe? He turned and walked towards the door. For a terrifying moment, she thought he was leaving, that he would go back to the hotel and find Isabel. But he stopped, his hand on the handle, and turned back to her, a cruel smile playing on his lips. Don't worry, my love, he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. I'll be right back. I'm just going to get you some water. He was toying with her, enjoying his power, his control. He knew she couldn't move, couldn't stop him. He was savoring her helplessness. While he was gone, Eleanor's mind raced. He had confessed. The monster was real, and he was more cruel and calculating than she could have ever imagined. But his arrogance was his weakness. He believed he was invincible. He didn't know about Isabel. He didn't know that his perfect crime was unraveling, stitch by stitch. He returned with a glass of water, his charming mask back in place, as if his venomous confession had never happened. He placed the water on her bedside table, just out of her reach. A small, petty act of cruelty. There you go, darling, he said, his voice smooth as silk. You just rest. I'll be here. He sat back down, picking up a magazine, the picture of a devoted partner once more. Eleanor closed her eyes, not in defeat, but in calculation. She had the confession. It was a weapon, but a useless one without proof. Everything now rested on Isabel. She could only pray that her sister had been successful. The minutes ticked by, each one an eternity. The beeping of the monitor was a constant reminder of her fragile mortality, a stark contrast to the iron will that was now forging in her soul. He had called her ordinary. He was about to find out just how extraordinary an ordinary woman could be when she had nothing left to lose. An hour later, which felt like a lifetime, the door opened again. It was Isabel. She looked exhausted, her face still pale, but as her eyes met Eleanor's, she gave a tiny, almost imperceptible nod. It was done. A wave of relief so powerful it almost made her dizzy washed over Eleanor. For the first time in days, she felt the icy grip of fear begin to loosen its hold. Isabel leaned against the doorframe, a hand to her head. Julian, I feel awful. I think I need some stronger medication. The hotel concierge recommended a pharmacy just down the street. Would you mind walking with me? I feel a bit shaky. Julian looked from Isabel's pathetic form to Eleanor's sleeping one. The idea of playing the hero again, of being seen as the caring family man by the hospital staff clearly appealed to his ego. "Of course," he said, standing up. "Eleanor's sleeping soundly. We won't be long." He glanced at Eleanor, a look of possessive satisfaction on his face, as if she were a prize he had already won. "She'll be safe right here." The moment the door clicked shut behind them, Eleanor's eyes snapped open. The plan had been for Isabel to get the evidence, but the confession had changed everything. They were no longer just building a case. They were laying a trap. Isabel had been gone for less than 15 minutes, but it was enough. She burst back into the room, her feigned illness forgotten, her eyes blazing with a triumphant fury. "I got it, Elle. I got everything," she said, her voice a torrent of words. The password was eternity. Can you believe the nerve? It was all there. The insurance policy, the secret bank accounts, the one-way ticket. But it's worse than we thought. He's not just a con man, he's already married. I found emails, a whole correspondence with a divorce lawyer. He was planning to leave his wife after he got your money. He was using you to fund a new life. The news was a fresh stab of pain, but it was distant now, a clinical fact rather than an emotional wound. The man she thought she knew was a complete fabrication, a house of cards built on a foundation of lies. I sent everything to myself, uploaded it to a cloud drive, and then wiped the laptop's history, Isabel continued, her efficiency a thing of beauty. I also called the embassy. They gave me the name of a detective in the major crimes unit, someone who deals with foreign nationals. They told me not to trust the local police. The detective, his name is Vittori, is on his way. He's been briefed. He has the files. The finality of it was breathtaking. While Julian was playing the part of the concerned boyfriend, his entire world was being dismantled. There was a sound in the hallway. Julian's voice. He was coming back. "Get in bed," Eleanor whispered urgently. Isabel scrambled onto the visitor's cot, pulling a blanket over herself and resuming her role as the sick sister just as the door opened. Julian walked in, holding a small paper bag. "I got you some crackers, too," he said to Isabel. He glanced at Eleanor. "Still sleeping. Good." He had just settled back into his chair when two men in plain clothes entered the room. They were quiet, authoritative. One stood by the door. The other, a man with graying hair and a sharp, intelligent face, walked towards the bed. "Julian Croft?" the man asked. His voice was calm, but it held an unmistakable weight. Julian looked up, surprised. "Yes? Can I help you?" "My name is Detective Vittori," the man said, his eyes not leaving Julian's face. "I have a few questions for you regarding the fall of Ms. Eleanor Vance." Julian's smile was smooth, practiced. "Of course, Detective. I've already given my statement to the other officers. A terrible accident." "So you've said," Vittori replied, his tone dry. He took a step closer. "It's interesting. We have your sworn statement that Ms. Vance slipped and fell. But we also have a life insurance policy, taken out 2 months ago, for $5 million, listing you as the sole beneficiary. We have records of you accessing her private financial accounts. We have a one-way, first-class ticket booked in your name, leaving the country in 3 days. And most peculiar of all, we have emails detailing your plan to divorce your current wife, Mrs. Amelia Croft, as soon as this insurance money was paid out." Every word was a nail being hammered into Julian's coffin. The color drained from his face. His charming facade dissolved, not cracking this time, but shattering into a million pieces, revealing the desperate, cornered rat beneath. This is a mistake," he stammered, looking from the detective to Eleanor's still form. "She's confused. She's been through a trauma." "I'm not the one you need to convince," Vittori said, his voice turning to ice. Then he looked directly at Eleanor. "Ms. Vance, we have a recorded confession from you, taken by your sister an hour ago. Is there anything you'd like to add?" Slowly, deliberately, Eleanor pushed herself up on her elbows. The pain was excruciating, but it was nothing compared to the satisfaction of this moment. She locked eyes with Julian, letting him see the full force of her consciousness, her memory, her fury. "He confessed to me," she said, her voice clear and strong. "He said I should have died. He pushed me. He tried to murder me." Julian's face contorted in a mask of panic and rage. "She's lying! The bitch is lying!" he shrieked, lunging towards the bed. The second officer moved instantly, intercepting him, twisting his arms behind his back with brutal efficiency. The sound of handcuffs clicking shut echoed in the quiet room. The war was over. As they dragged him out, still shouting, still protesting his innocence, Eleanor fell back against the pillows, her body trembling with exhaustion and release. Isabel was by her side instantly, her hand warm on Eleanor's. Tears streamed down both their faces, tears of relief, of grief for what was lost, and of a profound, unbreakable love that had been tested by fire and emerged stronger than steel. Months later, the Greek sun felt different. Eleanor sat on a terrace, not on a balcony, a glass of lemonade in her hand. Her back ached, a permanent reminder of the fall. The scars, both visible and invisible, were still there. But they were a part of her story now, not the whole of it. Julian had been convicted, his dual life exposed, his other wife a shocked and unwitting ally in his prosecution. Eleanor had learned the true meaning of betrayal, but she had also learned the depths of her own strength. She had hit the ground, broken and shattered, but she had not stayed there. With her sister by her side, she had clawed her way back, not to the life she had before, but to a new one, forged in truth and resilience. She looked at Isabel, who was reading a book in the chair beside her, and smiled. The fall had been an ending, but waking up had been a beginning. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs a message of hope. Remind them that even after the most devastating falls, we can find the strength to stand up again, often with the help of those who never left our side.